Good afternoon. This is Tina with Juneau Suicide Prevention Coalition. I'd like to welcome you to the Let's Talk About series. We have been doing programs every noon hour, 21 programs to be exact, for the month of September to honor the Suicide Prevention Month. And today we have a wonderful guest, Sarah Lynn Tabachnik with AWARE, and she will be giving us a talk on domestic violence, what we think it is and what we don't think it is. So in just a moment, I will hand the conversation over to Sarah Lynn. Sarah Lynn, thank you so much for joining us. And before we get started, I'd like to let everyone know, our viewers know, that this is a recorded conversation. It will be available on our Facebook Live, as well as at the end of the month, it will be on YouTube. And closed captioning is provided there. So if you have any questions as we go through the conversation,
hey, Tina,
please
could you repeat that?
Sorry, folks. My internet is unstable and kicked me off. I apologize. But what I want to say is if there are questions, please put them in the chat box so that we can be sure to address those. All right. Once again, thank you so much for joining us with the Let's Talk About series. I'll hand it over to Sarah Lynn.
Hey, thank you, Tina. And thank you, NAMI Juneau, for putting this series together and providing some education for our community, and actually, I guess, when it's on YouTube for anyone, anywhere who's able to access. And thanks, Brandy, for being there as well. So a little bit about me. I work at AWARE. AWARE is Juneau's domestic violence sexual assault program. And as a program, we offer services for people who have survived gender-based violence, domestic violence, sexual assault. We provide intervention services, which is kind of the backbone of our program. Additionally, though, we have other equally vital programs. We have a prevention program, because the thing about gender-based violence is it's 100% preventable. So part of what we work with is the entire community. We have a coalition called Hatush Lachish. We believe it is possible to end violence. And so we work in that way. We also have a program for men who have abused power and control in their relationships. We all grow up in this culture, and the culture places certain expectations on men as well as on women about how we should behave and how we should think and what we should do. And those are often burdens and burdensome and confining. And our men's program works with men to teach them other ways of being in the world and how to move through the world without buying into or exhibiting those things that transcend our culture, that are part of our culture, of the expectations of how boys and men are raised. And the third program we offer is transitional housing and housing programming. We recognize that for many people who need safety, part of that safety comes in safe housing. And housing is difficult to find in Juneau under the best of circumstances. And so we work with folks to help them find affordable housing for long-term safety and stability. So that's about AWARE. And about me, I came to AWARE in 1987, which is quite a while ago. And when I first started at AWARE, I was working with kids. I was a counselor for children doing play therapy and counseling and doing some groups with teens and working with parents. And of course, 33 years later, my job has changed many times over the years, and I became more administrative. Right now, I am called Deputy Director. And that's a little bit about me and about Aware.
Wow, that's a lot of programs that you have that are just really rounded out. And I heard you say 100% preventable, that violence is 100% preventable. And that just stays with me, right? Because we know that that it happens far too often. So that just really sticks with me, that term. And we have a safe home that I'm understanding that if somebody is in an emergent situation, they can come to the shelter. And then in a long-term way, you help them to find longer-term housing that is affordable and is it permanent? Is that how that is? Permanent or transitional or both?
Right, depending on people's needs, ideally they could move into something permanent, but recognizing that we're all in different places with different resources and capabilities, so trying to build on strengths and help support people as best we can with what their individual needs are. Yeah, thanks for talking about our emergency shelter, because someone's on staff 24/7. Anyone can call our care line any time of the day or night. Services are confidential, and if they need a safe place to come, we can get folks to Aware. We also serve 9 rural communities in northern Southeast Alaska, so we can help people get to Juneau if need be, to our safe shelter. We're happy to do that, to work with community partners here in Juneau as well as in the communities that we serve.
That's great. Now, is there typically space, or do you fill up and then we have to do something else, or do you typically have space in an emergent situation?
That's a good question, Tina. We sometimes the answer is both. We really try to, and I think successfully, to make space for everyone who needs a safe space. And, during the time of COVID-19, we are with more awareness and have more safety precautions, and we're still open.
That's great.
And providing those services. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are you seeing an uptick in people in need, or how has that been?
In terms
with the stress of COVID.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
There's a lot of stress. I don't know that we're seeing more need in terms of people coming to stay at Aware for safe shelter. But I think, people continue to call our care line all hours of the day and night to talk, maybe in crisis, or maybe just having some questions about relationships, or about safety or concerns for others. We're happy to help with whatever people's questions or concerns are.
That's great. Now, I think that I read that the Aware Shelter is not only for women. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that too, because I think for a long time, Aware was, while we provided services for people of all genders, shelter was for women. And if men needed a safe shelter, we would find them separate shelter, which was great in terms of immediate safety, but wasn't great in terms of access to an advocate, just downstairs or down the hall, or an advocate or a kitchen. stocked with food. So depending on people's needs, you know, we weren't always able to provide that for people who were not women. What we began in 2018, so gosh, yeah, it's a couple years now, was a gender inclusive shelter where we welcome people of all genders to stay overnight for safety at Aware. And that has worked fine, actually. You know, we have people who identify as women, people who identify as men. You know, in general, women are victims of domestic and sexual violence. That being said, they're not the only victims, and certainly violence occurs in gay and lesbian relationships as well. And, you know, Tina, when we were talking about the title of this or what we would talk about, some of it was about, well, you know, what do people think of when they hear the term domestic violence, right? And, you know, oh, do you want to say something?
No, I'm listening.
Okay, great. May all my listeners look like they have something to say. You know, sometimes people imagine, you know, black eyes or a lot of violence, physical violence, and that if there's not physical violence, there's not domestic violence, or, you know, there are some perceptions that people may have. And the reality is that while physical violence is a part of abusing power and control in a relationship, what domestic violence looks like may look very different. So, for example, maybe just even defining what we're talking about, because in domestic violence, we're talking about a pattern of behavior. So not an isolated incident, which might be different, by the way, than how the Juneau Police Department identifies domestic violence, or how the law identifies domestic violence. But we are looking at a pattern of behavior where one person in a relationship uses coercive behaviors to get another person to do what they want them to do, or what they want them to say, or believe how they want them to believe, or think how they want them to think, in a patterned way. So in a pattern of behavior, so that the person who is abusing power and control is in fact controlling the other person in the relationship, who is often adjusting her behavior to adapt to the person, to try to keep the peace. So it's not as if, you know, in all relationships there are compromises. Here we're not talking about compromise, we're talking about in a person who's abusing power or control, it's my way. It's my way. So if I say dinner's on the table at 6 o'clock, then dinner's on the table at 6 o'clock. And if I come home and dinner's not on the table at 6 o'clock, at 6:05 when the dinner's on the table, I have every right to throw it against the wall. I have every right to tell you what a terrible partner, mother, whatever you are, because you can't even get dinner on the table at 6 o'clock. Etc., etc.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, that it's a pattern. Yeah. So that's what abuse, what we think that it is, and what we don't think that it is. That's both. It is both. It's anything that that offers the I guess manipulation of behavior, the coercion of behavior. And so was there more to what abuse isn't? So abuse, what I heard, I believe that I heard, is that a one-time incident is not necessarily, it's not a pattern. So while, excuse me, it may be an abusive moment, it's not by your terms. Is there something else?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Tina. You know, it can manifest in many ways, what domestic violence looks like, or what we call, so if you think about, well, how does power and control, abusive power and control manifest? What does it look like in a relationship? So let me give a few examples, or how it could look. So one is emotional abuse. We talk about emotional abuse, and that can look like name calling. It can look, Tina, you named manipulation. It can manifest in all different ways. But basically, the person who's on the receiving end, I'm going to say the victim for now, is made to feel terrible about themselves, is feeling diminished in their own person as well as in the relationship. And that's painful, because all of us have talents and qualities that we are meant to develop and express and share with ourselves and with the world. And to be diminished and kind of shrink our persons is, I think, a real abuse, an abuse of our spirits as well. So emotional abuse is a very common tactic. It may be like name calling, maybe, you're not a good parent. If I weren't with you, nobody would be with you, etc. Another tactic of abuse is isolation. And I thought of this too, Tina, when you were talking about COVID, asking, are we seeing more domestic violence? And if you are attentive to the news nationally, the answer is that likely yes. And people are worried about people who are unsafe in their homes because they're not necessarily able to leave. People aren't going to work as usual. People aren't seeing friends as usual. People aren't seeing outside family members as we had in the past. And so the isolation is worse ever. So why is this so important? It's critical because when we're isolated, what that means is we're only getting the message from the person who's isolating us. So if the message that I'm getting is I'm stupid, fat, and ugly, and that's the only message I'm getting, I will come to believe that I'm stupid, fat, and ugly. Now, if on the other hand, I have a job, or, well, let's just say I have a job, and I go to work and someone says to me, hey, Sarah Lynn, you did a good job on this. Then I might start to think, well, I may be stupid, fat, and ugly, but I'm not totally stupid because, I did a good job on that, right? So even that, I'm getting a little bit of a different message. Or I may be able to say to someone, maybe I'm at a work meeting or talking to a family or friend and say, my partner said this and it made me feel terrible. What do you think about this? Just to get another opinion. And in fact, I did post the WARES phone number in the chat box, which is 907-586-1090, with the hope that people will call. One of the things that can happen is we can break that isolation. So a phone call takes a lot of courage and can help break the isolation. We have trained staff on 24/7. People can call any time of the day or night. And you don't have to give your name. You don't have to give much information. You can give as much or as little as you are comfortable with. In terms of confidentiality, We have a very high standard of confidentiality. The only time we would need to go beyond or report something is if a child is being harmed, or we have reason to believe that a child is being harmed. We are mandated reporters. Or if we believe somebody is suicidal or homicidal, we want to report that as well, because we want people to be safe. We are all about safety.
Right. So once I get there, and maybe I want to make the call, but I'm afraid, and I don't think that I can leave the house if I'm being isolated. Then how does that work? I mean, if we're isolated and but I need to get away and I manage to sneak a call in, how do I escape? How do I leave?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And the reality is that an advocate will safety plan with you. So we'll try to get a sense of what your life is like, what your days and nights are like, and how you can be safe. So how you can be safe if you choose to stay in the relationship, how you can be safe if you choose to leave the relationship. We're planners, you know, because it's not always safe for folks. And we want to identify how to move in ways that are the safest for you. So that's a great question, and thanks for allowing me to talk about safety planning, because sometimes, you know, many women are safety planning without even calling it that or thinking of it in that way. But planning for safety, you know, how do you do that? You know, many women have lived with an abusive partner for a number of years, and somehow they've managed it. You know,
yeah,
there's a lot of strength and wisdom.
There's, you know, I think too that a lot of, so I want to come back to this because we said victims, and I want to talk about victims and survivors in a moment. But many victims still love their partner and maybe don't want to leave right now, but what else can be done, right? So is it ever the case that your services are used for maybe both the man and the woman? Is that how that can work? And maybe I don't need to leave, but maybe counseling or something on that nature. Does that happen, or are they typically emergent situations? How does that work?
You know, depending on where people are in their relationships, different things can work out. I will say that you are right on when you say many women love their partners who are abusive to them, or many people love their partners who are abusive to them. And of course, you know, they didn't fall in love with someone who was abusive to them. They fell in love with someone who had beautiful qualities and who still has those qualities. And one of the things is that those qualities are not being expressed anymore. And so there's a lot of hope. Like, I know who this person can be, right? And, you know, we don't want to believe that we didn't give the person one more chance. And yet when we come to see that we give a person one more chance and one more chance, and they are not utilizing that to their benefit and to the, you know, the benefit of the relationship, at a certain point, I think people decide they need to make a different choice. You know, there's a riddle, which is, how many counselors does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is 1, but the light bulb has to want to change. So, you know, if someone is abusing power and control in their relationship, and they decide really like, I learned this in the culture, I learned this in the family I grew up in, I don't really want to do this to my partner. I don't want my partner to be afraid of me. I want to have an equal relationship. And I think that's maybe leads to your question, can things work out? You know, we do offer the men's class, which is open to any man in the community. It's called Men at Work, which is men really learning what their work is. Because no matter what women do, men, given the power structures, patriarchy, and colonialism that we live in this culture, that's where the power lies. And men can make a real difference as individuals and as a group. So, so we certainly invite that.
Great work. So I have another question before I ask you about some of your other programs. Is it true, and I don't know that this is or not, but in an abusive situation, without intervention, that abuse escalates? Is that this is how I understand it, but I don't know that to be true.
Yeah, it often does, Tina, and it often doesn't. So let me explain that a little bit. The goal of the abuse is to get someone, if I'm abusing power control in my relationship, my goal is to get my partner to do what I want them to do and to think how I want them to think, right? So if they're going to do that just by me giving them a look, or maybe I was punched them once, and when they see my fist, they know what that means, then I don't necessarily have to become more violent because my control tactics are working. Right? Now, if, for example, my partner decides, gosh, living with Sarah Lynn is awful, I can't stand to see her fist like this, or, you know, one more time, and I'm going to leave. Now, what happens then often is that the person who's abusive is going to try harder to rein that person in, right? Oh no, you're not leaving. So you may even, you know, if I can jump forward a little bit, we often hear about murder, suicides, or murders in domestic violence situations. And really every day I see them in media. And it's often, if not, you know, it's the majority of the time, it's that the people were estranged, they were separated, she had left him, they were divorced. So the more that the victim is trying to get away, the greater the offender, if you will, is trying to hold on. If I can't have you, no one can.
That makes a really unsafe situation. So if I given COVID-19, I can't talk on the phone, can I contact somebody on my computer? Maybe I'm just sitting somewhere and we have a website.
Sure.
With the chat or something.
Yeah, great question. Aware has a website, and that's in the chat as well. So people can look things up, reach out in whatever ways are most suitable to them. You know, and really, I guess, you know, I hear this and I want people to know that there are people who care about you and people who care about your circumstance, and you matter. And if you're not able to reach out right now, please feel the care and the love and compassion of other people and of the universe, because you matter, you deserve to be safe. No one deserves to be treated with abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your advocates, when the time is right, what do the advocates do? We help to find housing and
Sure. Well, they also, there's the concrete things like help with housing, or are you looking for work? Are you looking for, temporary assistance to needy families? Are you looking for counseling? Are you looking, whatever the resources in the community you might be open to or needing, we want to help connect you with them. Maybe you have a substance use disorder. Maybe you would like to pursue a work learning program. We really want people to get what they need, job assistance. If you have kids and yet you want to work, what do you do with your kids? So really helping people figure that sort of stuff out, as well as being, if you will, peer counselors. So helping folks process their experience. It's not unusual that people, this is not someone's first trauma.
Yeah.
That often as children, people have experienced trauma, either growing up with some sort of violence or witnessing some sort of violence. And, people live with a lot, and there's so much strength in people. And so just wanting them to know that that's very okay. Like how you are and who you are is perfect. And over time, we continue to be perfect, and we continue to value ourselves and make changes in our lives that we want to make that will work for us and support us and allow us to express ourselves more. But if we've been taught from a young age that what you think doesn't matter, what you feel doesn't matter, it's hard to suddenly start. You call aware and someone asks you, what do you think or what do you feel? How on earth do you even know?
Sure.
Yeah. So we really want to give people space. We want to give time to just be by you. Experience yourself in a new way, experience an environment that supports your safety, that supports calmness. I'll never forget the time someone from a new agency came to Aware to visit, and she came in and she said to me, "Oh, Sarah Lynn, it feels so good in here. I thought because you're a crisis center that I would come in and just feel all this crisis." And I thought that was so interesting. And I said, yeah, because when people come in crisis, we want them to feel the calmness, right?
Right.
So, I would love to say, and it's like that all day, every day, but that may not be the case, and yet that is the atmosphere that we invite and we work to extend.
It's beautiful. It's thank you for your work. And then I understand too that if I have children, maybe the reason I stay is I don't know what to do with my kids. They can come as well.
Yes, your kids are very welcome. We have children's advocates on staff as well. Mm-hmm. So people working with kids, people working with families, people working with grown-ups. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned also legal advocacy. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the, it's probably a really helpful resource. So thank you for asking specifically about it. I think people may or may not know about protection orders, and maybe I can just say a little bit about them. Protection orders, so our legal advocacy works with civil matters, so not criminal matters. We do have folks who do help when there are criminal cases. So for example, if there's been a physical assault or a sexual assault, we have a team of folks who can work with the survivor moving through the criminal justice system. But we also have I think more of our work is about civil issues. And civil issues are where a crime has not been committed. So that could be divorce, that could be custody, and that could be protection orders. And protection orders are where if my partner has been abusive to me and I'm afraid of my partner, I may, I may or may not call the police. The police may refer me to AWARE. They may refer me to AWARE for a protection order. And what a protection order is an order from the court where I fill out the paperwork with it, if I'd like. I mean, I can do it myself, but ideally I get someone who's an expert in this, an AWARE legal advocate, to help me with it in completing the paperwork, where basically I'm asking the judge to keep my partner away from me. So if we live together, that my partner needs to not come to the house or the apartment, that if we go, if we have the same group of friends or go to the same faith community, that my partner is not allowed, for example, to be there, that my partner has to stay a distance away from me. And this can be granted, and then it's called a short-term protection order, and in 20 days there's a second hearing for a long-term protection order. And at this time my partner has a chance to come and tell their side of the story, if you will. And then the judge will decide if I need a long-term protection order or not. And the short term also can talk about the kids and can look at other issues that are involved. But basically, it's a piece of paper. For some people, that's very meaningful. You know, some folks don't want to have anything in court, or you mentioned that I'm gonna call the police, and they don't want to have any trouble with the law. For other people, it holds no meaning. So in each case, it's really different, and again, it's part of safety planning.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah Lynn, I want to thank you for all of your, again, all of your great work and for sharing the information with us. The intent of the Let's Talk About series is, there's a couple. One is to promote positive mental health, right? So however that looks, to promote positive mental health. And the other is to connect our community, our citizens in our community, with services that they might need, to let them know the services that are out there. The other is to connect organizations and what we can do to help to lift up our community collectively. What is it that we can do together? And it sounds like your agency does that as well, is to find the different places that can help and to walk you through that very scary process. You know, when we're not healthy, it's hard to think all of these steps through. So there is that connection piece. The other is volunteers. We have community members that just want to help and be connected in some way. Is there an opportunity for volunteers within your organization?
There is. That's such a great question, Tina, because things look different with the pandemic. You know, we had a pretty robust volunteer program, and it lessened some, and we still have a volunteer coordinator who I'm sure would love to hear from folks who might be interested in volunteering, whether it's answering the crisis line or helping with some officey things. Yeah, folks should feel free to give a call.
Great, great. Well, again, I thank you. I thank you for all that you do, and want to thank the viewers as well for listening to today. You'll see in the chat box, if you have any questions, please let us know. But you'll see in the chat box again, AWARE 24-hour care line, 907-586-1090. Or you can go to www.awareak.org. And I want to thank the listeners. Sarah, I want to thank you for your time. And we'll just give it a minute to see if anybody's got some questions to add. Also, would like to remind our viewers, hit share. If there's somebody that you think that can benefit from this information today, please hit share. And also this recording, as well as the others throughout the month, are going to be recorded and saved, as well as available on YouTube. Okay, did you have any final words for us today?
Well, I just want to thank you, Tina, and thank NAMI. You know, I just appreciated what you said about like the whole community, because really, like, everyone has a role to play. You know, there's whether it's with even just with our thoughts, you know, sending good wishes to people and good health and healing. If we're not able to, you know, take more actions, just reaching out in whatever ways we're able is beautiful and meaningful. So thank you. Right, as community agencies working together to keep people safe, also as individuals, I appreciate all that y'all are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will just give our captioner a minute to finish with the transcript. But in that, I'd like to say to everybody again, thank you to our viewers. Thank you, Sarah Lynn. And be safe. Be safe and know that you're loved.
Goodness,
Thank you. Goodness, cheesh.